show you it on YouTube.
Okay, Henry James stated there are few hours in life more agreeable than the hour dedicated to the ceremony known as afternoon tea. The sources listed below are just the ones that I used in my research finding out more about tea. So my things to cover today include history, the types and uses of tea, and how to make it at home. First, I'm going to cover a little bit about the tea in China. Tea traced back to 2737 BC with the Emperor Shen Nung. Basically, he was sitting having a cup of hot water because that's what they drank back in the day. And leaves flew in and landed in his cup, or so the story says, and he decided that it tasted a whole lot better. So continuing on in 400 to 600 AD, the use for tea was mainly medicinal, for medicinal purposes. I'm going to split the history up into 4 different dynasties. First, the Tang Dynasty from 618 to 907 AD. This is when the popularity of tea rose both for its flavor and for medicinal uses, but it was only used for elite and high priests because it was very rare. Next came the Sung Dynasty from 960 to 1260 AD. Basically, the popularity continued to rise, and also the emergence of tea houses and ornate teacups made out of porcelain were designed for tea. Thirdly, the Yuan Dynasty, which lasted from 1260 to 1360 AD. This is when the Mongols took over China. Tea became more of a popular drink for the commoners, and because the new leader of the Mongols, the Mongol reign, was not a tea guy, it kind of decreased in the courts and in the aristocracy areas. Finally, the Ming Dynasty from 1368 to 1644 AD. This is when the Mongol reign fell. Tea became widely popular again, and also along with that came the invention of the teapot. So I'm going to move on to the history of tea in England. In 1589, Europeans first heard about tea from the Venetian author who credited the lengthy lives of Asians because of their tea drinkings. Basically, the interest of tea spread across Europe from this point on, and in 1657, the first tea is sold as a health beverage in London, England at Garway's Coffee House. Moving on to 1644, the English East India Company takes over New Amsterdam and renames it New York, and so the British tea tradition ensues. In 1705, the annual tea importation tops 800,000 pounds, and in 1776, British Parliament passes the Townshend Act, which imposes a tax on American colonies for imported tea and other imported goods. Now for the history of tea in America. This dates back to 1650 when Stuyvesant brought tea to colonists in New York. At the time of introduction in England, America was still colonies and British run. So then by 1765, tea easily ranked as the most popular beverage in American colonies. In response to the Townshend Act, Americans decided they were going to protest in the Boston Tea Party Rebellion in 1773. When basically the colonies dressed up as American Indians, they boarded onto the East India ships, decided they were going to take hundreds of boxes of tea and dump them into the harbor in protest. And by 1775, after several attempts to lower the taxes, the American Revolution breaks out, and it came to an end in 1783. In 1880, America was the biggest importer of tea, and by 1909, Thomas Lipton formed his company in New York and decided that he was going to package and sell tea there. By 1904, iced tea was discovered at a particularly hot year, the World's Fair celebration. Basically, a tea vendor had a big vat of tea, and he had little money and a little bit of tea, so he decided he was going to dump a whole lot of ice and kind of raise the level of tea. So their iced tea was created. Now I'm going to go over a little bit of the types of tea. Black tea is the most popular in America. It's made from Camellia sinensis plant and is oxidized longer than the other teas to increase its length of flavor. Next came white tea. This is unlike black tea because it's not fermented. It's harvested before the leaves and buds open, so it makes it a more expensive product. Next comes green tea. This is gaining popularity today as a healthy tea because it's not fermented and it's minimally oxidized. Next comes the Rooibos tea. It's also known as a red tea. It's made from the Asclepias genus of plants in South Africa, and it has a different taste than the other teas because it's not made from the Camellia plant, so it doesn't have caffeine. herbal tea. This is a unique flavor because it's added, herbs and spices are added. So examples of that would be chamomile, lemongrass, and mint teas. So next comes the uses of teas. Some studies suggest that the antioxidants, polyphenols, or the anti-cancerous properties may reduce the risk of gastric, esophageal, and skin cancers if consumed in 4 to 6 glasses or cups a day. Also, 2 cups of tea a day may lower the risk of ovarian cancer by 46% in women. The polyphenols that help prevent blood clotting and also lower cholesterol levels. According to the Medical News Today, additional benefits for regular consumers of green tea and black teas include a reduced risk for heart disease. The antioxidants in green, black, and oolong teas can help block the oxidation of LDL or bad cholesterol, increase HDL or good cholesterol, and improve artery function. Next, I interviewed my friend and co-worker, Rachel McClure. She says that she drinks tea for both medicinal and spiritual reasons. She says it soothes my throat when I'm sick, and it relaxes me when I'm stressed. So finally, I'm going to demonstrate how to make tea at home. First, I'm going to make green tea. Okay, I've already measured this out for the ease of it all, but it's 5 teaspoons of green tea into your tea press. And basically what you do is you just pour enough water for 1 glass of tea over the tea. Press. And you let this steep for 2 to 2.5 minutes so you don't let it oversteep because it'll be too bitter. Also, you don't serve it with cream or sugar. Next, I'm going to go over white tea, which I already measured out again for ease. This is 1 teaspoon of white tea, and then you pour again enough water for a glass of tea, and you'll let this steep for 1 minute for the first go round. You can use white tea over up to, I think, 3 or 4 times. 3 or 4 times, and you increase a minute every time you use your used leaves. And then finally, I'm going to make an herbal tea. This is a peach and ginger tea. It's one of my favorites. I buy it in the bag because it's easier than doing loose leaf tea. And then you just run your tea over, and you let it steep for 2 to 3 minutes. And you can serve it with tea. Okay, I'm done.
Clap.